ballet school for the performance of the professionals and the children, and we were having a problem with the orchestra.
Yeah.
And my deal with the orchestra was, we will use a minute or less of your performance of the music, and they were fine with that. But, you know, if you're out in public and you see kids dancing to music, and you're using that in a program about street dance, what is your, you know, and you want to incorporate that, how do you?
Well, how much are you using would be the question.
Yeah, and let's say that they dance for a minute and a half.
Oh, that's not a dramatic use
Okay.
problem, a minute and a half. The dramatic use problem would be if you have enough of the opera, or the ballet, or the Broadway musical, so that the music is actually integrated, telling a story. Taking a minute and a half doesn't raise a dramatic use of the music question whatsoever. But dealing with the orchestra is a whole other thing. That's for them. That's not a, strictly speaking, a music rights question. That's a performance, you know, performers question.
They would-
Didn't Eyes on the Prize have problems with Happy Birthday?
I don't know specifically about Eyes on the
I thought
Prize.
that-
Happy
I thought
Birthday
the
is
rights were held up,
often
but-
recorded as a copyrighted song. There's a family that makes their income off of Happy Birthday, but I don't know the answer to that. I don't know why they would if it's used in a documentary. Shouldn't be.
I've just been told that it took them longer to get all the clearances for the music in it, and that was one of the problems.
That raises another interesting question, which is what happens if you have something that you want to put into a program, whether it's a piece of music that you think might not be covered by the compulsory license, or a film clip, often comes up that way, clip from a TV program. What happens if you call the owner and they say no, are you finished, and you're not? First of all, this is one area where it's better to, if you're not sure, to talk to your lawyer on the production first, because the lawyer may say that's fair use, don't call them, don't get them involved, it's not going to be a problem. If you do call the owner of a copyrighted work and say, I'd like to put this in the program, and they say, no you can't, or you can't get a hold of them, or it's a Hollywood studio and they say, sure you can, that's our $10,000 is our minimum, which they often cite as the minimum for a clip. And then you think about it or get some advice and say, well, this is actually a fair use. I'm going to be using a 30-second clip, and I'm using it in an analytical way, and it makes a point, and you use it anyway. Question is, can the copyright owner then say, you talk about bad faith, you knew you couldn't, you asked me and I said no. And the courts, though, have said no, asking and getting refused doesn't undercut an eventual finding of fair use. You wouldn't want to call somebody and say, I know I need your permission, will you give it to me? You just call and say, I want to put this in the program, is that okay with you, or can we work something out? And if they say no, or they ask for too much money, that doesn't preclude you from later claiming fair use. Better not to have made that call, but that's not the end of you.
How long of a clip would you say?
There's
You're gonna
absolutely no, this old stuff, you can't use necessarily 6 bars of a song, you can't necessarily use 30 seconds of a clip. There is no good rule of thumb. It depends. Now, with that said, if you're using 3 seconds, it's not the climax of a Hollywood movie, well, unlikely that it's not fair use. If you're using a minute, I'd worry an awful lot. But in between, I don't know. 30 seconds sometimes is just great, and sometimes 10 seconds, if it's the climax of a film that's in current distribution, would be suicide.
Does that work the same way music does? Like you could use it to broadcast it, but video streaming or DVD would be a problem, or do you still have to negotiate with them? Or
If it's fair use, it's fair use. There's plenty of cases where commercial distribution of what was originally non-commercial product, or even original commercial distribution, has been found to be fair use. But you get more, there's more running room if you're not commercial.
But we're having trouble trying to get clips of Saturday Night Live and 30 Rock
Yeah.
because we have an actor we've done an interview with, and they're saying no, but you think there might be a way?
That's individual legal advice needed on that one. There might well be a way to take a small part of even those current programs if you're using them to make a point in an analytical way or an illustrative way. Yeah,
Okay.
could well be.
Any comments or opinions or guidelines about courtesy keys for, putting on video clips that you're using from the, courtesy of CBS or courtesy of Elvis, on the clip or at the tail of the show?
One piece of advice is if you didn't get permission to use them, I wouldn't put on it. And we've had that happen a lot. But very often, if someone gives you...
Stolen from
Very often, if someone gives you permission, they'll say, I want to be credited. And I typically, even if they don't ask for it, I typically put them in the credits. Absolutely.
Larry, did you follow the debacle that happened at Idaho Public Television where there was a debate and unbeknownst to the incumbent, a person that was trying to keep the incumbent in office took something off our air and then used it in a political ad? Very nicely, super at Idaho Public Television, they did that. It looked like, they made it look like that we did it, but they called and said, can we use this? And management said no. They did it anyway.
Yeah,
they have money, we don't have money.
yeah, I don't know that particular one, but I was involved in maybe 5 of those this last political season. And there's a couple of lawsuits that are going on right now, including one by Fox.
Yeah.
The situation is this. First of all, the question is, did you have the candidates sign something when they came on about who would use it, and is it they or their authorized campaign people using it, or is it someone else using it who just grabbed it?
Someone else.
But so, because if you have the candidate signing something saying I'm appearing, the premise here that you can go on is candidate, and we used to years ago, a candidate's less likely to accept an invitation to appear in a debate or appear on a public affairs program or a round table or something on my public television station if the candidate knows that a misstatement or a funny expression could be grabbed and used by somebody else. I think things have changed. Now, with digital media where anybody can grab anything so quickly off the air, I think most candidates figure anything that happens is fair game. But going on the old presumption, candidates would expect you to enforce your copyright. If you produce that coverage, that's your programming. Somebody else doesn't have the right to use it. Very hard to enforce. Only one case that I know of, and it's about 30 years ago, and it was a New York State case with no precedential value anywhere else, but candidate grabbed something off the air, broadcaster who had produced the program brought a suit and said that this was unfair, and the court said political discourse is entitled to the highest protection of anything, and this is a brief use, and we're not going to get involved with unfair competition or copyright or anything here. This is, the open debate. Threw it out of court. And since then, there have been all kinds of threats to go to court. Now, typically, our clients are in the position where they don't have the money to that's not what they're going to do. So somebody grabs the stuff, uses it usually in a negative ad. I always say to clients, let's write a letter, tell them they're violating your copyright, they better not do this again, and that'll be the end of it. Then when the candidate who was attacked comes in, says, what are you going to do? We'll say, we did all we can. We told them they shouldn't have done this, and copyright, and you have the letter to show them, and that is about it. There's one case from this last election cycle, and I think it's the election cycle before. Fox had screamed at a committee that had grabbed something off air and made a lot of noise, and they were laughed out of the industry. I mean, people were making fun of them for thinking they could restrict this use of brief excerpts, and they backed off. I think a case was filed this past election cycle. I don't know if it's still around, but they don't go very far. People forget about it. Usually it's saber rattling, just like you were doing, where you say, we own this stuff and nobody better take it, and then you forget about it.
Yeah, well, then the odd thing, we taped it was a live broadcast, but it was in a public arena. So any anybody could come down, and there were probably, 100 people, there were probably 50, cameras,
Yeah.
and personal,
Okay.
cameras, and they could have done it themselves, and we wouldn't have had copyright to that because it was their taping. But instead, they decided to take it off air.
Yeah, you wouldn't have had copyright to that footage, but you probably should have, depending where things were, if it was a controlled environment, whoever controlled the environment could have said, no, contractually, you coming in here means you're not allowed to tape.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is, there's no footprints on most of this digital stuff. That guy's not putting a bug at the bottom right of his screen, and very hard to know where things came from. Absolutely so. Let's move on to other topics.
I did have one question.
Yeah.
If something was taken from your air, used in a negative way, and it makes it look like the station was responsible in something like the loss of funding, or, if something negative happened to the station because of that use, what are the?
What's your redress?
Yes.
What would it be? I'm trying to think of how
Let's
it
say,
happened.
let's say that a program was taped, it was a round table, and part of this round table was used in an ad that made it look like your station was pro-gun, or pro-this, or pro-that.
I
Something
see.
that would cause you to lose viewers, that would cause you to lose, funding from,
This is,
underwriters
yeah,
and
I'm
things
with
like
you.
that. Okay.
Not a copyright well, I guess there's a copyright question embodied in it, but to me, that's more a defamation question as to whether somebody has defamed the station by taking something out of context, and what you might have there is a defamation suit.
We talk about pictures
Yeah.
a little bit, because we're all producing like neighborhood documentaries. We get pictures from residents or the city or somebody's archive or library. We use them in this piece that we produced, and then development wants to sell these pieces as premiums and pledge funds. We have the rights to sell those pictures that are embedded, that we may or may not have gotten specific releases for to
No.
begin with, because who knows who owns them.
No, you don't, and it's hard to track. If it's just family pictures, it's hard to figure out who owns them sometimes, but.
But in each
What
case,
you have the right to do is to incorporate published photographs into your television productions for broadcast only. That's the only right you enjoy without clearances.
we would have to go back to try to track, for instance, if a library has an archive of pictures, is the library a good enough source to say, yes, we have these pictures, they were donated to us, we can give you the right to sell them on your DVD? Is that good enough?
That's good enough. I want to get it in writing, and but you're still on the hook if it turns out they were wrong. Most photo archives, in my experience, actually know
Who?
very expressly what
And you
they're
wanna
entitled to give you permission to use and what they're not.
And you want to go back as far as you can to the original owner, family member?
Yeah. Well, but most of the stuff and the kinds of shows you're talking about, most of it's unpublished rather than published. So
Right.
there's no compulsory license at all. And very often what people end up doing is assuming that there's a right. I mean, this is a practical thing. You get something, a family member says, oh yes, we took a picture, here's my mother shaking hands with Charles Lindbergh or something, and I took the picture and you can use it. Well, did you take it or did your brother take it? Or what,
So
I think as a practical matter, I would probably tend to make the assumption that somebody says this is a family picture and you can use it, that you can use it. I want to get a release from them if I'm going to use it beyond public television.
Now, what about online? Because, you put these things online, people can download them. Sell
The
them.
rules online are the same as they are anywhere else. If you can't take it, if something's posted online, it doesn't give somebody else the right to use it.
So do we have to make it non-downloadable? Is that the idea?
Oh, I thought you were approaching it from the point of view of what you can use that you see online. You're saying when you post online?
When we post online, if we we set up a web page about the show that we did, we put some of the representative pictures up there. We do that?
Well, if they were
promotion of the show, or?
Promote, you could argue that this is just promotional, but it all goes to how did you get the picture? If it was a picture that you licensed, did you license it for that use? If it's a picture you were using under the compulsory license, you don't have the right to do anything with it online. You can argue it's promotional, but not a great argument there. I would hesitate.